It's so dark.
Oh,
That one struck a nerve.
oh, God. That's funny.
Dennis, my mate, happy hour to you, man. Last of 2021.
Oh, is that so?
End of the year, man. Well, no. We might actually,
one more. No,
we might do one next
New Year's
week.
Eve.
Yes, if I am able to accomplish that.
New Year's Eve. That's the 29th.
Eve. Yes, we talked about that last time. Are you all ready for the birth of baby Jesus?
Nobody's ever said that to me. No, that apparently supposedly happened a long time ago. You mean the celebration of?
Yes.
Yeah, I've got images of a stall with clean hay and all these really friendly animals. The cow, for example, had like shit all over the straw. The Blessed Virgin dressed in blue.
Yes.
And
I saw a bunch of cows the other day and they were all covered in shit. And I was just like, man.
Yeah. They roll in it. Not unlike, they have habits similar to yours, not unlike you.
I certainly have that sort of an odor around me.
I remember going to the beach with you and asking everyone to lay their shat upon the beach. And I didn't know why. And then later only to find out you were rolling in it. And particularly gross because you have hair all over your back. And that's
lay your shat upon the beach. Yeah. As we used to say.
So as we move into this rather juvenile area of odors and shit, I want to tell you something that very well could be the subtext of the title of our webcast, because I think it's that good.
It's a webcast, yes.
Or whatever this is. I never did quite figure it out. But apparently last night when I fell asleep, my wife was still awake after I fell asleep. And at one point, when I rolled over, I put my arm over my head. And as I did, she caught the odor of my underpit.
Yes.
And little did she know that I was quasi awake, but she went, "Oh dear." She said, "Oh dear." And then she slowly moved my arm down back on its side.
Right.
And then today she was telling me about it and she was laughing about it. And in a moment of absolute clarity, she said, "You smelled like a carcass."
Sexy.
You smelled like a carcass. And I asked her for permission to use it in the recording tonight, and she gave it. So
dead man sleeping.
Ripe man sleeping.
Wow. You smelled like a carcass.
I went fishing yesterday. I drove up to the Muskegon River, and it was a bit harrowing. I might say the water was up 1.5 feet, which means that there were some fish that were brought down from the Great Lakes, because whenever it rains and there's fresh water, the fish in the Great Lake, which these are, go upstream. And when they do, that's when we try to catch them. And so the good news was that it brought in some fish. The bad news was it was already hard for me to get to the fish before it was 1.5 feet higher.
Ooh.
Now, when I waded out to some of my old spots, because I've been there a few times, could not get halfway there, which meant that the water I had to fish was particularly shallow and fast.
Wait, so the water came up and you had to fish in the shallower water?
The shallower water crept up on the bank to begin with.
Right.
My point is that when the water was 1.5 feet lower, I could wade out 20 yards to get to the middle of the river. And now that 20 yards put me in just knee deep, really fast water. And it was, anyway, I tried a few spots and then went back to where my entry point. It was hard to get to where I fished because you've got to walk about 400 yards, and that 400 yards takes 20 minutes in the knee deep, sometimes waist deep water up the shoreline.
You know what Tom Petty said about this? The waiting is the hardest part.
That Tom. Hey, here's a toast to Tom. We lost him 2021.
Oh, I think you are wrong about that.
You think it's 2020?
If not before, but toast to him anyway. Yeah.
How quickly time flies.
He took the Michael Jackson drug.
Did he? To sleep?
No, to chill out. I mean, he and Prince and Michael Jackson, I think, all went out on the same chemical.
Oh, boy. That's too bad.
Yeah. What you got there? Ooh. That's a big old bottle of Dewar's.
And I got it last Christmas, and I brought it up here because I want you to see that on this webcast.
Yes.
Webcast.
Whiskeycast.
Fucking podcast. It's gone. It took me a year.
Well done. How many liters are in that jug?
It's a half gallon.
Fuck.
Let's see.
Alexa, how many liters in a half gallon?
0.5 gallons is about 1.9 liters.
1.9 liters.
1.75 liters, actually,
Nope.
as I read this.
But anyway, almost a
Selected
2 liter
cans.
bottle. I learned recently on another webcast that the whole concept of single malt scotch only became a thing in like the 1980s.
Ah,
Like
I thought it was the other way around.
before that, they were just mixing all the stuff all the time.
All the time.
And because what the point of mixing is that you can achieve a consistent result bottle after bottle. But with single malt, where you're only going through one process, like you could have a bad batch or a good batch, but if you had 4 bad batches and 2 good batches, you could mix those together to blend into the blended whiskey to have a reasonable quality.
Right.
whiskey.
Right.
But the whole concept of a single malt is very new.
That's
And-
astounding to me.
Right.
I never knew that.
Hey, the other interesting thing I learned today was
Number two.
Number two.
Do you have these written down?
No, these are all like present.
There's probably no
mind.
more than 2 things then.
No, this is the last one.
Well, that would be 2.
Yes, there's a third. The word parenting did not exist before like 1990. Like no one talked about parenting as a thing, but
They
then
said raising children.
or being a parent. Like no one
Right.
says husbanding or wifing. It's about being that part of the relationship, being a parent. But that at some points, people started publishing books about how to parent, and then the verb parenting came out, and it was all like in this sort of Oprah Winfrey world where that concept got created as I am parenting. And I learned this in the context of someone. There's a book that was published. Anyone can probably Google it. That refers to, some people think about parenting as if you are a carpenter, where you measure things out and you plan what you're going to do, and you're trying to shape your child in this way.
Who thinks that?
All the parenting books talk about how you need to do this.
The parenting books tell you. It's not
Right.
what we do.
But the contrast to that, to the carpenter, is the gardener. And the gardener, as a parent in the gardener context, is you want to create a space for the thing to grow. And you don't know if bad weather is going to come, or some diseases are going to come, or if your plant or child in this case is going to flourish in a way that you didn't expect. But it's your job as the parent to create this space for the child to flourish. And if trouble happens, it's not a plan this and then it's going to turn out one way or the other, like the carpenter model,
Right.
which I found very, very enlightening. Like just a good analogy is always
Yes,
valuable.
I would say that the analogy I would use for parenting is a pinball machine,
Okay.
and all sorts of things happening, of course, never any doubt, everything unexpected, and the capability sometimes to go ahead and do something about it and keep things even, Steven. The
You
paddle,
just have to
so
keep
to
putting in
speak.
the fucking quarters.
I don't know about continuing to put in quarters.
Okay.
I
Well,
don't remember that being part of pinball.
I mean, there were probably like pennies when you were a child, but
Tuppence.
no, but the
1800s, right?
But there's this whole industry around parenting that implies so much control to the parent in a way that has never ever been true. And apparently, like, this industry only really happened in the past 20 years because in the past 20 years is when there were new parents that potentially had never been around little children. Like for all of human history, by the time you were to parenting age, you had been around your cousins and your neighbors, and you knew how to deal with little children. But we're to this point now in society where you can grow up to be 25 or 30 and never have been around a little child,
Right.
in a way that wasn't true before.
A lot of only children.
A lot of only children, but also, yes, more only children. But there's this whole generation of parents that when they see a little kid, they're like, I don't know what to do with this little human. But whereas 100 years ago, everyone that was 25 had been around little kids their whole life. And I don't know, that's very reductive, but it was a thing I heard today and I thought that was interesting.
That's the second thing you learned today, and quite a bold subject of many faceted and interesting, very interesting stuff. Now,
Yeah. So I'm done.
There were 3.
That was the third one.
Oh, 2 morphed into 3. kind of.
It
was 2A and 2B to me.
Right, 2A and 2B.
Yeah.
And 2 not to be.
Turned out. You turned out 2B.
Indeed. So here we are.
Here we are. Did we finish everything we had to say about the final episode of Succession? Did you see many interviews, I'm sure, because you were not following the feeds prior to your completion, but
Correct.
I believe I sent you, or maybe many interviews, but the one that I was particularly interested in was Logan's, what's his name? Brian Cox's interview, which interestingly enough, everyone else had something to say about the final episode. And Brian Cox was about the last of the cast.
Yep.
To be interviewed. Although
was that the one I sent you where he was talking about people coming up to him and being like, "Hey, tell me to fuck off."
Right. That's it.
Which is such a hilarious scenario to have a catchphrase.
Yeah.
That is that off-putting to have. And he talked about being in this really. He was in some meeting for women meeting about the Me Too movement and diversity and stuff, and then they saw him and they were like, "Hey, you old white man, tell me to fuck off." which he appreciated the humor to that. But yeah, it's a good catchphrase.
Yeah, it's he when he was interviewed, it was really interesting to hear what he thinks is going to happen, because he doesn't know any more than we do. And the fact is, there's nothing to know because it hasn't been written yet. He said he was surprised that they're waiting to write until after the first of the year. He said he thought they'd be at it.
Did you hear the thing where the writers wanted to kill him on the first in the first season? Like the whole point of the title of the whole series was that he was going to die in the first season, and then in the other seasons, the kids were going to fight over over the rights.
But he was so good, they said no way.
But he was so good that they wrote, like, he had no backstory in the first episodes, but then he was so good that they wrote this backstory, and as a gift to Brian Cox, they wrote his backstory as being from Dundee, Scotland, where he is actually from, so that they could go back there to have the wedding at the end of the first, I guess maybe the first season.
Ship's wedding.
Yeah. So that was he was just so interesting as a character that they were like, we shouldn't kill him off.
You're inspiring me to start it all over again, because while we're waiting, because I saw it. It's been how many seasons? 5?
We just finished season 3.
Three. So it was 3 years ago that I saw the first episode. I haven't seen it again. And
I just, in the past couple of months for this program, for this webcast, I started again from the beginning.
Webcast. Where do you see the pictures?
They're cast like a bait into the rivers of the internet. Speaking
of casting bait, we're planning our next trip to Topsail. It is going to be a pre-trip to the Myrtle Beach Classic.
Is it? No.
And yes, and my brother and I are decided that we're going to take a fucking road trip, and we're going to load up my truck.
You're going to drive?
We're going to drive 7 hours, spend the night in Charleston, West Virginia.
I was going to say West Virginia.
Then drive another 7 hours and get to Topsail and spend Wednesday through Wednesday fishing a whole week, and then going down to golf. And my brother will be with us for the Myrtle Beach Classic. Yes, my older brother.
I can't wait. Your older brother, whose name is
Joe.
Joe.
He's not a golfer.
Jojo. Well,
and he's not a musician, but he sings. He sings, and whether he will or not is a whole nother issue. But he and I were in a high school musical together back in the day. I graduated in 1971, so this would have been 1967 or 1968. He played the governor, and he was senior. He was the senior, the governor of a state that probably was Oklahoma. I was Oklahoma. And I played a hippie dude named something Clayton III. I'd have to go back and think.
Billy Wallace Clayton III.
No, but I had a goatee, a long dark goatee. I had on cut off shorts that were below my knee. So hillbilly, barefoot.
You had a goatee. Hold on. You had a goatee when you were a freshman in high school?
This is a sophomore in high school, and the goatee was actually about 6 inches below my chin.
Okay.
For the play.
Right.
It was glued on. It was fucking horsehair.
Obviously. Yes.
Obviously. Not so obvious to you, which was why what have you been drinking and how much is really what the question is.
So you had a horsehair merkin.
Merkin.
Do you know what that is? You know what a merkin is?
No.
A merkin is a pubic hair wig.
To this moment, I never knew something like that existed.
Yes.
So this is two things. Two things I've never known.
It's a.
But then again, I smell like a carcass.
No, but there were times in history where pubic hair was fashionable and or not, and there was like, I think the origin is that prostitutes had trouble with like lice and stuff, and so they would shave themselves, but then that was not attractive to their customers, so they would put on a little horsehair goatee, so to speak. And but nowadays it's more common with Hollywood actresses that will wear something down there that looks. Anyway, that's a fact for another time. Is your fact number 3?
I think so. It's interesting how you say they choose something else for down there.
Indeed.
Very politic of you. Very politic. So what goes on in the world this week? Here we are, end of the year. Building Back Better stalled till next year because President Manchin, Senator Manchin.
Yes, I've heard all of those jokes about which Joe is really in charge. This weekend, my family and I did a thing.
Oh, I remember you were going to do something, but what was it?
Yes. Way to set me up for that. It was going to be a nice and sunny but cold Sunday. And we decided to go and hike. So the little town where I live is at the mouth of a river, where the river pours out into an estuary and a river basin into the sea. And that river, about a 40-minute drive from where I live, like just magically appears out of a cliff. There's this cliff where there's this, it must be a 200-foot waterfall.
No shit.
There's just this cliff in the mountain, and then water is spewing out, and it lands, and the river starts there. That's the birth of the river, as they say. And I've known about this, and my wife and I have driven by there and seen it before, but we looked up a hike that we could walk. It was like 4 kilometers is 2.5 miles from one place to go up to the place where you can see the waterfall really nicely and then come back. And so we said, let's do that. And so we took the kids, and when we got in the car, my wife realized, when we got in the car and we drove 10 minutes, and then my wife realized that she had left her phone at home, her work phone. And so we had to turn back and come back. And while we were waiting for her to go up and get her phone, my kids and I put together a music playlist to listen to in the car. And like, we each got to pick a couple songs, and I added it to the playlist, and then I put it on shuffle. And the kids really love this. Like, this made the fact that we had to drive for 45 minutes not a problem.
Yeah.
In a way that otherwise they would have been like, are we there yet? And so
that's your wife.
She won't shut up. No. And so anyway, we were about to get to our place where we were going to start our hike. And we got to a place where it said the road is closed.
Oh.
And we were like, shit, I know that it's been raining really heavily recently. So anyway, we turned around and went back 100 yards and parked. And we said, let's just walk up this closed road and see how far we get and whatever happens. And so we started walking, and eventually we got to a point where like some boulders and shit had fallen down into the road, but it was easy to cross, and we walked, and we finally got to the waterfall, which was gorgeous. And then we decided, hey, why don't we go up to this other spot over here that's, a little bit further away. Anyway, at the end of the day, we had walked in miles. It was 18 kilometers. In miles, it's 12 miles with like little kids walking uphill and then back downhill.
12 miles,
which is a lot.
How many hours?
We were probably there for 4 hours.
Oh my God. Good for you and good for them.
Yeah, exactly.
Stalwarts.
And so
stalwarts, I say, let's drink a toast to the stalwart children.
The stalwart children, yeah.
Stalwart children. Our meat. What are you drinking in there? What's in that silver mug?
That's a gin.
Gin. Yeah. It's
gin.
I read the other day that some lass said it's an Irish accent, and no matter what she said, it sounded like it was pleasant.
Aye. So yeah, we did this crazy thing, and the kids were always like, "How many more kilometers?" And I was just navigating from my phone about where we needed to go. But anyway, we got to this one spot that my wife and I had been to before, but I don't think the kids had, where they've built this platform out over a cliff, and you're looking down to a river below you that's like 200 feet below you or something. And the platform is made of this like grid of iron, so you can see through down below you, which is super wild. And it was a great, and the weather was fucking amazing. Like,
Yeah.
I thought we all thought it was going to be super cold, but especially when we were walking uphill, like
We're not cold,
we were not cold at all.
but it was
And
sunny.
it was blue sky, sunny.
You gonna
Fantastic.
post some pictures?
I can put some pictures in the show notes. happyhour.fm/138, I think.
That inspires me. I've been meaning to walk a block and a half to get to the 50-acre.
Oh, a block and a half?
Yeah.
We walked 12 fucking miles and you
Well,
walk
a block and a half to get to the entrance of the wetlands and all of this stuff. I haven't been there much in the cold. And I wonder, it's curious. I've been watching, I'm 7,000 steps today. But man, I started to tell you about the river.
Tell me about the river.
So when I walked the 400 yards and fished a couple of spots where I was a bit disappointed I couldn't get out deep enough, I ended up going back just in front of the truck where the truck was parked anyway, in front of where there's a boat landing. And so I took off my heavier coat and sat in the hot truck, drank 2 cups of steaming hot coffee that I had in a flask, in a mug, in a thermos, and went out and found a perfect drift. And for the most part, was not too worried about the current. But at one point, I wanted to get to a particular part. I thought I saw a fish in the water. It looked like a tail moving around. And so I wanted to get out to it. And when I did, I ended up on kind of a ridge of stone that were about 5 and 6 inches in diameter.
Stone Ridge.
In other words, Stone Ridge. Now, imagine that the current in the river is strong enough that a 4 or 5 inch diameter stone is going to roll with the current.
Yep.
So that's how these ridges are shaped. Water goes high, water goes low. So while I was on the ridge, the water current was so strong that the stones started turning underneath my feet. But at that point, at the end of the day, I was so adept at organizing my body against the current that I literally could plant my feet in the shifting stones and surf the ridge for about 3 feet.
Surf the ridge.
Moving
It's
somewhat
a episode title.
down the river on shifting stones while my indicator and therefore my fly line and my 2 flies I had tied on my line went downstream. So did I. And I just did that a couple of times because it'd be easy to get to the end of the ridge and suddenly you're in a rapids. And I never fell down, but I also never got a strike. Never really. What I thought was a fish was probably a hunk of seaweed. Yeah. But
do you think if a spider is trying to fish, he would use a webcast?
Itsy bitsy spider comes down the water spout. Down comes the rain and washes the spider
Yes.
out.
Come on, Grandpa.
The
You
sun
got these.
and dries the spider. No. And
Dries up all the rain.
dries up all the rain, and the itsy bitsy spider goes up the spout again.
Yes. That was close. You were almost close. Almost close.
Almost close. The Christ is slowly weeping.
Why?
It is the night of our dear Savior's birth.
Why is the Christ weeping?
Long lay the world in soulful expectation when he appeared, and the soul felt its worth.
I mean, he appeared out of his mother's.
The Lord our God has returned in joyful exultation.
Returned? From where?
From yonder past it breeds a glorious morn. Fall on your knees. Oh, hear the angel's voices.
Mm.
Oh, Christ. Oh, Christ. Oh, Jesus Christ.
Jesus H. Christ. What's the point?
Wait, what if the song were updated so that it was like, oh, Jesus H. Christ. The H is for hell. As in what the hell did I die for?
I'm pretty sure that our very first episode was talking about the nativity scene and how there were spider monkeys there. But they were on a rocking chair and something. I don't recall. Listeners can go back and look at and hear that horrible sound recording. I've done 2 bits of homework. I have watched 2 or 3 episodes of Dexter. And for sure, the original Dexter went about 1 or 2 seasons longer than it should have. I feel like Dexter should have quit earlier. Towards the end, I was a little bit like, okay. But that said, I am pleased to be reintroduced into this universe where Dexter Morgan is a person. And the idea that he would be living under another name and that his son would come and find him is very, very nice.
I thought it was cheesy. I thought the whole thing with the reindeer, that was such bullshit.
Sure.
And him holding his hand out and the reindeer sniffing. It was just fucking cheesy. It was like in the original Dexter, they never would have considered something that was impossible. They didn't create a fantasy world that Dexter lived in where a fucking albino motherfucking reindeer is so like into Dexter that he fucking trusts him enough to smell his fucking hand. The first series never would have, the writers never would have contemplated that.
Okay.
There was nothing but credibility.
I agree.
So it was very cheesy. And the romance is cheesy. And I thought Harrison returning home was good, and I'm quite impressed with the actor. But here's the thing. The new setting, it's not Miami, for fucking Christ's sake. They're in the middle of somewhere. How many people does he want to kill? I mean, it's like, well, there's not a lot of bad guys up there.
Yeah,
and
it's a little bit like how in Murder, She Wrote, she was living in someplace in Maine, and in a town of 2,000 people, and every fucking week there was a murder.
It's like,
and
it's a little suspicious.
Okay. So, yeah, it's a little bit of a, well, my career didn't go anywhere else. Let's cash in a little bit more on this.
And that's
okay too.
It's an interesting thing that you raised that, is because one of the thoughts that crossed my mind was that they must be paying him a lot of money. I don't know what he's been doing, but I knew up until the time that he got the Dexter role, he was phenomenally busy.
Right.
And the paragon of his career was in 6 Feet Under. In my view, where he was excellent. But he's a song and dance man before he's anything. I mean, he's Hugh Jackman in that regard. That comes from more
musical background.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and a singer and quite a lot of broad talent, skill set. But he is older now, and I dare say I'll guess that he's 42 years old. What do you think?
He looks way older than 42.
You can
as a 43-year-old, I'm offended by your.
You don't look 43. You look like you're about 36.
Well, I love you. Michael
C. Hall.
His age is 50.
Oh my God.
Born in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Oh, I guess I knew that. And so those song and dance stuff and the musical stuff, and even he's not going to be playing a son anymore. And I don't know. But having said all that, I haven't missed an episode and I'll watch them all.
Okay. You're not telling it well.
I did know, but it's not all bad. It's entertaining to a certain degree. What did I pick up the other day though? I picked up the history of the Comedy Club and a documentary of the Comedy Club, and which featured a relatively current day David Letterman interviews and lots of clips of him when he was introduced at the Comedy Club, and Jay Leno and Richard Pryor and Prince. And it was riveting. And it was very funny. So I picked that up. That's a couple episodes. There's another one. Oh, Elizabeth
Warren.
No, Queen Elizabeth, but I think the title of it is Elizabeth, and it's Helen Mirren.
Yes.
And it's only 3 episodes. And I caught the first one, and she is just remarkable. Just remarkable.
I think it's okay. Today, as we record, is the release date on HBO of the new Matrix movie.
HBO Max.
Yes, that I think you sent a trailer to me about. That looks freaking amazing. But like, I guess there's all these superhero movies where there's all this flying around and explosions and shit, and almost none of them appeal to me. But I'm kind of curious about this Matrix movie, because the first one was an absolute classic. The second 2 were meh, like attempts to cash in on that first success. But I'm curious to see what modern, because the original Matrix movie had special effects beyond anything that anyone had seen before. And I'm curious to see what level of special effects they bring to this new one. But my other little bit of homework that I did was I've watched the first 40 minutes of the 6-hour Beatles documentary.
Oh,
called Get Back.
And where did you find that?
It is available on Disney Plus, but I have found it. It fell off the back of a truck in front of my house, and I have been watching that. And but I've also been listening to some podcasts that discuss it. And the general consensus from the people that have watched it is that everything that you've heard about why the Beatles broke up and stopped being the Beatles
wrong.
But everything that you've heard is true.
Oh, everything is true.
Like, it's not that there's he said, she said, right. It's that all of it is true at the time.
Right.
That yes, Yoko Ono was a problem. Yes, Paul's ego was a problem. Yes, George was a problem. And
George just got really tired of it. He just got tired of being second banana and Paul trying to fucking tell him how to play fucking guitar.
Right. But at this early stage where I am 40 minutes in, it is like I expressed to you 7 weeks ago, we'll say that what I would love to be a fly on the wall when Led Zeppelin was putting together their second album after their initial success. Within 10 months, they put out their second album, and what that would be like. And that's basically what this documentary is so far. I don't really understand the reasons. I haven't really researched it, but they locked the Beatles into this warehouse and told them you need to write and perform 14 songs in 1 week.
Oh, well, and the backdrop is they hadn't performed live for years.
Right. And
their last album had diminished sales.
Okay.
And because they were stretched thin relationship-wise, Paul came up with the idea that we got to do what we've always done well, which is be up against it and come together.
Deadlines.
And so what ended up happening was that it had, on top of everything else that was going on, this idea that workaholic, Paul McCartney, came together, which George came into it like another fucking thing pulled together from Paul, workaholic. And you know what? I need the money.
Yep.
I need the money. What he had done was he put a mortgage on his fucking home to be able to help produce Monty Python.
Right.
And so he was stretched thin. He needed to make a pile of money, and on and on. That's what I know about it. I'm thrilled to know that you're doing it. I've got to.
But like this whole, like, if you could dream up a music documentary, it would be putting the Beatles into a room and having them compose songs live in front of the camera, and it is as amazing as it sounds. And when they run out of ideas, they go back to like songs that they were singing back when they were teenagers, and it's just fascinating to watch this level of genius. People, like, one person starts strumming a thing, and then the other person starts like doing some lead guitar on that, and then the drum starts up, and then the bass follows, and it just like they're coming literally from nothing into something fucking amazing.
You showed me, you sent me the Paul McCartney clip
of when he is writing Get Back. That's the one that went viral, where he's just fucking around and George has just come in and hasn't taken his coat off yet and starts like noodling some riffs over what Paul's doing. And it's just, wow. Like, what ease of creation that is.
Well, but you're not presuming at all that Paul didn't come into that eager with what he had been thinking of and walking through, and he had at least some of the beginning words, and he knew where he was going with it. He couldn't wait to try it out with the boys, but he didn't make it up instantly on the spot. Is that what you're thinking? I'm thinking not. I'm thinking that he was really happy to get into the studio to be able to do something with these guys that he'd been playing around with, that he'd been toying around with.
I don't know. A lot of it seems very like the piece that I just saw before we started this webcast was they were doing Obladi Oblada, but it started out as, oh my God, Desmond is doing something at the place. Right. But it was like Desmond was at the flea market at first, but then they were like, oh my God. It's like it
morphed
in this beautiful way that is like history, and so much, and a lot of the stuff that they are playing around with I've never heard before because it never made it to a. But then every once in a while they will do something that is. Wait a minute, I know that, but I know that melody, but with other words, and they've reworked it.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, it's amazing. We're so lucky McCartney is everywhere. He just released an unbelievable set of music. I walked into Barnes and Noble the other day, and it greeted me immediately upon the door. I was struck.
Barnes and Noble is still around?
Oh yeah. I was struck that when I picked it up, that it was so heavy that I thought, oh my God, this is heavy. It was, I don't know how many CDs. Yeah. Quite. So you just, what did you mix with your gin? Schweppes. Tonic at zero calories.
Yeah, zero something.
Zero sugar.
I also recently saw an interview where Conan O'Brien interviewed Paul McCartney, and this will be in the show notes. You really should check it out. And Paul was super playful, and he talked about the origin of the song Michel. No.
Michel.
Yeah, and he talked about how when they were in Hamburg, he used to when they would go out to clubs and stuff and parties and whatnot, he used to pretend to be a Frenchman, and he would wear like a tall turtleneck shirt and just sit in the corner with his guitar and being like making up French, trying to get laid, basically. And he said no girls ever fell for that. And like he thought that 10 years later, he thought that was just a stupid thing that he did. But then one day, John came up to him and said, "Hey, remember that stupid thing you used to do in Hamburg with the French stuff? That was actually pretty good. We should make a song about that." And that's where Michelle came from.
Oh, no kidding. No kidding.
Which I thought was hilarious. But yeah, that's a good interview. And like I saw that the same day that I listened to Conan's podcast. Conan has an amazing webcast where he talks about different things and his fans like ask him questions and things. But one of the questions that he was asked was his fans and celebrities. One of the questions he was asked was, what was the interview that you've done where you were most nervous about meeting like the celebrity that you were interviewing? And he thought about it for less than a second and said, for sure, it was Paul McCartney.
No kidding.
That he said, I've never given an interview where I knew more about the person than I knew, because he's a super Beatles nerd. So he knows everything about the Beatles history and whatnot. And he said the interview with Paul McCartney was the most, not necessarily nerve-wracking, but the one where he was the most awestruck.
Oh, yeah, awestruck.
And it was amazing that same day YouTube suggested to me that I see this.
Right. I'd look for that.
I might send it to you if you're lucky.
Oh, okay.
If you're nice to me for the rest of this webcast.
That is now.
Now?
The rest of the webcast is now. I got to go. But
I'm going to cast a web somewhere. If I can, we will record next week.
Are you traveling?
I'm traveling.
Oh, you're going.
We're going south.
Somewhere. Are you going to the islands somewhere?
Going to the islands.
Cayman Islands?
Canary Islands.
Canary Islands.
Tweet. Yep.
I would love to hear from you down in the Canary Islands.
Yeah, we'll see what the internet connection is like.
Sure.
But if we don't do that, then Happy New Year to our...
Whether we do that or not, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you, Tom.
My daughter's partner has caught the COVID.
Nice.
In spite of being vaccinated, and so our Christmas is delayed until January. Some of it is delayed.
We also have COVID issues. My daughter's class has been canceled for the rest of the year because there is someone in her class that was positive. And there's some idea that everyone needs to be tested, but like they won't give us the appointment to be tested. But then we're also like leaving in less than 2 days. So I don't know.
We have 15-minute tests available by walking in and just getting it done. There's no wait. You just go into any number of pharmacies, ask for it, and they'll say, yeah, have a seat. 5 minutes later, you've got an instant test. 15 minutes later.
It's not a matter of you knowing. It's a matter of the government knowing.
Yeah.
Like just because I took a home test when I was positive and it came out positive, like I still needed to go to get the government one that said I was positive, so that it can be like official with the world.
Right.
So I don't know what we're going to do. I don't think we're going to have to cancel our trip, but that would suck. But fucking COVID, man. We'll see.
Fucking A, man. Hey, love you.
I'll let you know. Love you too, man. Peace. Merry motherfucking Christmas and happy solstice.
Have a good one. Good.
Good.
To you and yours.
Peace, bro.
Okay, that does it for episode number 138, which I edited while on a flight to the Canary Islands. And I'm now sitting here on a rooftop looking at the sunset, and it is all just amazing. We were unable to record another episode this year, so you can find the show notes at happyhour.fm. And we'll see you next year.